the funniest recollections I have were with the band, and that was playing in carnivals, fetes and Christmas carols, because you'd be plied with alcohol either before or during walks around the village. And the classic of all time, I think, was in the 63 winter, I think it was, when we were going around the town and it was freezing cold and everyone was inviting us in for a hot toddy or something like that. And by the time we got to the square, where we always ended up to play outside the pubs where the purses and pockets had been loosened up by the alcohol, that was always the best collecting point. And I got a vision now of Harold Morgan in a great coat with a pork pie hat on and a fag, and he used to roll his own fags. Rolling his own, he could do it one-handed, rolling a fag while conducting the band, and then lighting his rollie, conducting like this. And he'd had so much booze. He was against the wall where the telephone box used to be there, the foul. And he slid slowly down into this little drift that had accumulated and carried on conducting, sat on the floor. And this was a famous day when Cornelius O'Sullivan, known as Con, who married Rosemary, she became she was Brookman, and then, but before that she was called Rosemary Thomas. I don't ask me how. Her husband plied Billy Evans on his way home to lunch, the Christmas dinner, as we call it in Tom, not lunch. He plied him with Drambuie, and Billy could hardly speak. So Con got some of the boys out of the pub to take Billy and planted him in the doorway of his house. Whereupon, when Eileen opened, not Eileen, Hilary opened the door, he just went like, dunk. And anyway, his kids got him to the table because she insisted he had of his Christmas lunch. And then he just went head first into it. Billy wasn't a drinker. That was the funny part of it. And also, my father's cousin, Cyril Painter, on the same day, had the same occurrence. He was taken to the front door and Ethel opened the door. He wasn't seen for months after that. But another occasion was, I think it was the St. George's Day parade or something like that in Robina. And Ton Band were leading the carnival. And there was a sort of carnival queen and all that kind of thing. And Robina was a bit at market from Ton. Everything was a bit posher. And people sort of looked down on you if you didn't do things quite right. And because it was a paid job anyway, so we probably get about 20 quid for it or something stupid. But anyway, one of the drummers, Daimani, who at the time played bass drum, ex-army guy, asked Digger Thomas, who normally played the side drum or the bass drum for Melon Griffith, to play one side drum, and his pal from the Royal Artillery or whatever it was on the other side drum, kettle drum. And we started at Beulah Chapel to walk up to the park in Robina, and it was digga, and they were doing what they call rim shots. They did all this fancy stuff with the sticks, banging the frame and all that. And they were doing all of that, and Di was there doing all this stuff over the top with the drumsticks. And of course we were playing along with this, and Evo Morgan, the drum major, with his mace out front, going up the road. We suddenly realised we left the parade half a mile behind, because we were walking at Welsh Guards pace, sort of 90 or whatever it was, 100 to the minute. So we were there, marking time. And then we got into the park, and when they did the presentation of the Queen and her attendants and all this kind of stuff, Conor Sullivan was playing third cornet, and he was on the edge of the stage. And Conor couldn't play at all. It was terrible. At times, Owen Jones and Ivor Jenkins used to stuff, if we were in a contest, he'd insist on playing. He was so keen. they stuffed green fairy soap down his shank so that he can blow it. Anyway, he was sat on the end of the stage, and he was always a very inquisitive, fussy type, and he said, "What's this bit of rope by you? Why is it hanging on?" It was hanging over his shoulder. Anyway, he yanked this thing, and it was in a slip knot. And down went the centre pole of the stage, right? And the roof all started to cave in as the cornered section were all playing this fanfare for the Carnival Queen. We didn't get invited back there. It's just a bloody disaster. On another occasion, that was a Scouts one up in Llanyshian, St George's Day. We had to go up to, can you remember there was a factory called Brocklehurst Yarns. They were up on the road where the Marks and Sparks is now, along from where the Inland Revenue Building is. We had a march from there. If they had a big car park and they had permission they had all the brownies, Cubs, Scouts, local councillors, Lord Mayor, all sorts. And we were the band, right up front. And he orders were, right, take them up to the church, stop, they'll all go into church. Those who want to go into church can go in. The rest of you hang about until we're ready to go back. Somewhere in the pub opposite. And anyway, formed up now to take them back to the place to dissemble the parade, right? So, okay, played down the road. And the order was from Evo Morgan, when I stick my mace up, usual thing, trombones they put their bells and slides up, and you do a counter march, where you walk through one another like that. Because at the end of this parade ground was this damn great brick wall. So we went down and all played away. When you're looking at your music, you virtually can't see much. And there was what normally signifies you to look is a double beat on the bass drum. That never came. Evo didn't put his stick up. We all crashed into the wall. But the rest of these parade, they'd all been practicing their marches, all looking on in total disbelief. It's such shambles. So that was Ton Band on tour kind of thing. Yeah, another one was we're in the British finals in it was the Fulham Town Hall, which doubled up as a swell swimming bath, so it had a very ringy acoustic. And in brass bands, you're always incognito, right? There's a tent with a judge in it, and there's a program number, then a draw numbers, and they have two cards. The people in the audience can say that program number 3 is playing number 1, that kind of thing. We were first on. The first thing we had to do was play God Save the Queen, right? And the announcer, "No, ladies and gentlemen, you're frightfully war. This band number, some program number, they're going to play the test piece, no applause, until after they're finished." And he then explained that everything was anonymous, and any such noise could disqualify the band. So Harold goes, "Right, ready boys?" And just think we're going to bring us in like that. "Come on the tone!" Ginger Edwards, who was working in London, hadn't told anyone he was coming. Right? This book ran on it. What's that? Of course, Ginger had vanished. Right? Anyway, we had to go off the stage, and then they had to do a redraw, but there was actually a fake, because they said, "Look, the judge doesn't know. Just go on as you were." And we just went on, and well, we were all in a terrible state. I mean, how the hell we played, I do not know. But that was Ginger. But he made it worse, because when we went to the hotel, he crashed in the hotel that night in one of the boys' bedrooms, and on the way out, of course, you had to sign the visitor's book. And he put his name down as Isaiah Smith or something like that in the book. This bloke was counting on it. He said, "How long? We go on too many." If he'd just blagged it and said, oh, I've just come to see my brother, or something like that, he'd have got away with it. Oh no, he'd had breakfast. Oh, I mean, there's a couple of to do with Ginger. I won't tell you on air, because they were, well, completely off the wall. But, oh, he was terrible.